Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good pal, the brownie paper towel man in his lumberjack shirt, looking cute.
Thank you.
You got some snow over there. You feel all cozy, like a little bug in a ruggie?
Not really. I mean, we did get a lot of snow, but it's not that cozy here because my wife is off in Connecticut, so...
You should do this on your back porch so it could be a winter wonderland while we're talking to you. It's a Christmas. I think this is going to be a Christmas episode. Well, it's December, so.
Yeah, but it's about like 3 degrees out there, so I would rather not go sit out there.
Okay. So, what are we talking about today, Ty?
We're talking about the movie that famously made Bill Murray and Richard Donner hate each other. But that somehow turned into a Christmas classic anyway. Scrooged.
Anyway, this is going to be one of our December episodes, one of our Christmas episodes, and we're going to be talking about a movie that I love, and I think you love it too, right? I don't know if we've talked about this movie yet.
I have a love-hate relationship with this movie. There are things about it that I think are fantastic, and then there are things about it that baffle me. So...
And what like Lee Majors, like Lee Majors being in the North Pole, like what are the things that baffle you?
It's less about the story and more about sort of the way it was shot and there's some odd choices directing wise, I think, that filmmaking wise, that every time I rewatch it, I've seen it a couple times. Every time I rewatch it, I remember, I go, oh Jesus, that's right, he did that. In prep for this, I did some behind the scenes stuff. Like I went and read some stuff and watched some stuff on the behind the scenes. And suddenly the things that always baffled me about it started making sense. Apparently it was not a smooth film set. So yeah.
Well, you know, what I love about movies around this time is when we fell in love with movies and it was pure, right? Because I didn't have nerd movie friends that we would discuss movies. I didn't read reviews or anything like that. I would just see a movie and if I loved them, I loved them. And this is a movie that I loved. I mean, every Christmas I will watch this movie. So this is one of those films. And, you know, getting ready for this podcast, I went back and read some of the reviews. And there's a lot of talk about it being mean. And
it is a very mean movie. And Bill Murray, he's playing a mean character. I mean, he like fires... Like
it's called Scrooged. Like, have we never seen it? It's Ebenezer Scrooge. He's never been a nice guy.
No, but so the difference is, I think, that like if you watch like the classic, what's the classic one from the 50s? Scrooge seems selfish and lonely and a little sad, really kind of self-absorbed. But if you watch Scrooged, Bill Murray doesn't seem he does seem selfish, but he doesn't seem lonely and sad. He just seems like the biggest asshole in the universe and doesn't care. Like he doesn't care that he's an asshole. He knows it. He gets off on the way people are afraid of him. It's a very different tone.
Yeah. Now, is this something that like you've always felt watching it or watching it now? And like did this strike you new as watching it recently, or did you always feel that way when you watched it?
Part of the reason why I had this love-hate relationship with it is because I used to say he's one of my favorite comic actors, but now I just say he's one of my favorite actors because he's done stuff that isn't comedy and he's still great.
Yeah.
So he's just in general one of my favorite actors. And I think he's incredibly charismatic. And the first time I watched this film, I was quite a bit younger and I was a huge Bill Murray fan. It felt like the movie was trying to make me not be a Bill Murray fan. Like it was pushing me so hard to not like him. And I think some of that is, again, this is why it's an odd movie to me. Some of that is directing choices. Some of the things that are done on the directing side in this movie, I think, are part of my problem with the movie. And I love Richard Donner. He's one of my favorite directors. So it's not like a bad director here. It's just I think it was the wrong director for the material. I think there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening between him and Bill Murray that created some of the tension that I'm recognizing on set. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot there. So this is kind of the Bill Murray period one of my favorite Bill Murray periods, because that you have the Ghostbusters and everything before that, where he's a comedian, he's hilarious, everybody loves him. And Caddyshack, he has these great parts, these great character parts. And then this is in the area when he's starting to carry movies. Like you got this movie, and then you got my favorite Bill Murray performance in Groundhog Day. Yeah. And being a movie star and being hilarious and those things. And I love this period. Then you have the third act of the Bill Murray, where he's the Wes Anderson. He's like the soulful clown in the Sofia Coppola movie. And I like those Bill Murray too, but he is beyond funny. He's super talented. And I like what you say, he's your favorite actor, because he's an extraordinary actor. And, you know, him being a dick in the beginning, because it's Bill Murray, nobody else could do this, but because it's Bill Murray, you still love him, and you love him for, like, you're laughing at it, and you're like there's some horrible things, like when he sees the waiter in the restaurant, and he puts him out and he's on fire, and I'm not laughing. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but he's like, "Oh, I thought you were Richard Pryor," and he says, and he says that, and it's fucking mean, and you see that, but there's something about Bill Murray that you can't help but love him, and the grumpier he is, that you love him even more. But the thing about his performance that I think makes that he gets away with this is in the Ghost of Christmas Past, when he goes back home and he sees his father, and his father's like throws out some, what is it, veal or something? He throws it out, and he's like, you know what you get in this market, and he's walking out, and the mom says, "Don't watch too much TV," and Bill Murray breaks down, and it really affects him in that. And I've seen, like, Christmas Carol, and we should go into the history of Christmas Carol, is by far my favorite Christmas story. And I read the book every year. It's a novella. I read the novella every year. I watch all my versions of Christmas Carol. This is probably my favorite. I love the George C. Scott one, but this is probably my favorite. But when you see him break like that, you realize, oh, he is so pent up that he's been abused and neglected his whole life, and he's fucking pissed off, right? And Christmas is the one time that everybody around him participated in. His father didn't do the lights. His father didn't do the Christmas or anything like that. He was mean to his fucking mother, and everybody got to participate in this holiday, but not fucking him. He didn't get to participate in it. And so the young kid is still locked up in him, right? And so now when Christmas is coming, that's just triggering him being fucking pissed off that he doesn't get presents, and he has to do the fucking veal, and he has to do those things. And the fact that he broke so early, and some of the other Christmas carols ones, like, they always are moved by seeing their past or whatever, but they don't break like that. And so seeing him break it like that in that moment shows that true vulnerability, and I have a deeper understanding of why he's being a dick and why it's motivated the way it is. That's on his performance. You know, that's a choice he made as an actor to be moved like that. And goddamn, like, Bill Murray, like, I think that's the first time I've seen him on that level of performance. It was so honest. It was like the clown, he stepped away from the clown. He stepped away from everything that Bill Murray has, and he was just had an honest moment.
Yeah, and I think you'd seen flashes of that from Bill Murray before this, but I agree that he is capable of that level of performance. And as his career went on, more and more people gave him the chance to do that, the opportunity to do those sorts of performances. And, you know, he transitioned from being a great comedic actor to just being a great actor.
So for me, like, when I read, I mean, I'm a sucker for it. It moves me every fucking time. No matter how many times I read the book, no matter how many times I see the movie, how many iterations, when he wakes up on his Christmas morning and he's fucking changed, it gets me every single time. And I think that it is, you know, a writer, lessons that they can take away from this is like, I think it's a perfect structure. It's a structure that has been, you know, that we've done over and over again. But it's like this great transition between, it's this great arc of a character, like this, the beginning of who he is, you know who he is, you're emotionally caught up in him and how he treats people. And then you have this, you know, going in the past and get to know him deeper and really understand what's happening him, and then him breaking, and then him like falling in love with life again and all those things. It just gets me every time. I think it's a masterpiece. But I kind of went back and was reading a little bit about A Christmas Carol, and Dickens, after reading a child labor report in the UK in 1843, he was so like furious about this that he was going to write a pamphlet. He was going to write all these essays and have them out. And then he decided that he was going to put everything into a story. Whenever you're, learning about writing and reading books on writing, one of the things that's most important is if you have something to say, if you can make a dramatic argument within your story. And he has such a strong point of view that every fiber of that story is expressing something that is deeply personal and deeply moving to him. And I think, are you a Dickens guy? Like, are you into?
No, I mean, so Dickens is one of those writers that everybody's forced to read in high school. And I think that's the reason why people think they don't like Dickens, because when you're forced to read stuff when you're like a teenager and you'd rather be doing anything else than schoolwork, and they're making you read something and write a stupid report on it, he's one of those writers that, like, then you come back to it when you're an adult and it's not an assignment anymore, and you realize, oh shit, this is why they were making us read this. This is actually really good. For me, Dickens and Steinbeck are the two that, like, I didn't realize I liked them until I was an adult, because I read both of them a lot as a kid, and I was like, oh, they're so fucking boring, they're so dry. And then as an adult, I reread some of their stuff, and I was like, oh wait, no, I get it now. Like, I think when we force kids to read stuff like that as teenagers, we do a disservice to them and to the material.
I think I went to the shittiest high school ever, because everybody's like, yeah, I read that in high school. I'm like, what fucking high school did you go to where you get to read these books? Because I didn't read these shit in high school. And it wasn't until like later when I got to college and you would just hear people, mention books, or you would hear books, books and topics of conversation. Like you hear Orwellian all the time and reference to 1984 and all these things. And I was like, well, I want to know what all this is. And so I read, I started reading Dickens, and I'm swept up in his stories like right away, and I'm like, "Hey guys, have you heard of Oliver Twist?
Have you heard of Charles Dickens?
Yeah, have you heard of this shit?
No,
and everybody's like, never heard of that. Oh God, like we heard that shit, and I remember reading The Great Gatsby, and I think a lot of people had to read that, and I'm like, fucking, this book is amazing. Like this guy's an amazing writer, and people are so pissed off because they were forced to read it their sophomore year in high school. I never had to do that, but anyway, so going back and reading that. And also, coincidentally, I guess that report that he read was the same report that Frederick Engels and Karl Marx read that inspired them to do the Communist Manifesto and like started the revolution through that foundation of thought. And what I think is interesting too about the Christmas Carol story is it's been told over and over and through different periods of time. And if you're not going back to like the classic transition, it also kind of has like a that decade or that time kind of spin on the story. So like Scrooged, like, do you remember in the 80s, and I don't hear this as much, now it's about the cell phone, but I remember in the 80s where it was like, everybody's like, TV will rot your brain, and TV is, and it's kind of like that thing. Also, there was like in that hilarious Scrooged ad for the Bill Murray's ad for acid rain, drive-by shootings. And it was all the things that we were afraid of in the 80s. And I never, at that time, I didn't understand what acid rain was, but it always terrified me when you hear like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Like there's acid falling out of the sky and it like melts you down or whatever. I don't hear acid rain much anymore. Do you?
No, but it is part of a larger problem, which is, so acid rain was a buzzword that got thrown around a lot because it sounds really scary. But basically, it's just you're pulling pollution out of the air in rain, and it's killing plants, which makes sense, right? And drive-by shootings, man, the 80s. If you were on the West Coast, like young kids were getting smoked by drive-by shootings all the time. Yeah.
But I feel a little differently about Dick Downer directing this because there is a level of weirdness in this thing that just makes it so delightful for me. Like the opening when Santa's getting, what was the story? Like Santa's getting attacked by assassins from like another country or something. And then Lee, man, Majors pops up, and then they have this, all out like war with whoever these people are. And there's just something so weird and interesting about, because it starts off and it's like in this idyllic, North Pole. And that's what got me as a kid. Every time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, what is this Christmas movie? And you see that. And all of a sudden it's like incoming. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then Lee Majors comes up on a snowmobile and they just start unloading on people. It's just weird, and it just pulls me right in, and I am here for it, man. And now you got Bill Murray, and I understand what they're saying he's mean, but when I see Bill Murray, there's something about, like, when he grabs the kid that wanders on the set, and the kid that doesn't speak, the Tiny Tim of this Scrooge, and he's like, "What are you doing here? What's going on? Where'd you come from?" And the kid can't talk. He doesn't talk. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, you're not going to talk? Well, maybe you do some talking downtown." And then it's like, but to me, I don't think Bill Murray's like yoking a kid. I think he's like fucking around in this cynical kind of sense of humor way.
Well, okay. So I guess we should talk about Richard Donner and Bill Murray then, because.
Yeah, let's discuss that.
Famously, I'd always thought there was something very odd about Bill Murray's performance in this movie. It just feels very odd. It feels very uncharacteristically not Bill Murray-esque in a lot of ways for me. And all of this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is like, I'm not saying this is the universally accepted opinion about this movie. I'm just talking about my opinion on it. But his performance in some places is so big and so over the top that it actually, for me, knocks me out of the scene. Where I'm like, whoa, Bill Murray, dial it, you're on 11. Just dial it down to 9, buddy. Just turn it down to 9. That's all we need.
Have you seen Caddyshack?
I have seen Caddyshack.
He's his best when he's opening up.
No, he's not. He's not. So
I mean, I wouldn't say his best, but he can vacillate between that, because he has a lot of subtle humor. The difference is
Caddyshack, Bill Murray is a spice. He's not the meal.
Right.
Whereas Scrooged, Bill Murray's on camera almost every scene of the movie.
But he has those, like when Bobcat Goldthwait was like, you and me are a lot alike. he kind of looks off to the side and then goes back to him. Like there's subtle humor too.
No, I'm not saying it's every scene. I'm saying there are scenes in this where he's so over the top. And in looking up some stuff on the movie, what I discovered is that Bill Murray felt like Richard Donner was constantly pushing him to be bigger in every scene. That, one of the things Bill Murray said in an interview is like, every scene, Richard would come over and go, louder, just do it louder, just do it faster and louder, just be faster and louder, and was constantly pushing him to get through every scene as quickly as possible and as loud as possible.
Yeah.
Which Bill Murray, apparently, looking back, did not like. Like, he felt like that damaged his performance. And he's never liked this movie. And the thing that I think was very telling is when Bill Murray said, "I think there's a really good movie inside of this movie that you can't see because everybody's running around and being loud all the time."
Yeah.
And I had never put into words what throws me out of this movie until I read that quote from Bill Murray. I'm like, that's it. That's because there's scenes in this that are so big and so loud and feel so out of place.
There's a famous interview that he did with Roger Ebert, and he was doing it for Quick Change, and he was shaving. Roger Ebert shows up to do an interview, and he's like, all right, I got to shave. So he goes in the bathroom, and he's shaving, and then he pops out with his shaving cream on his face. He goes, "Hey, you want to explain that 1-star review you gave me for Scrooged?" And he's like, I was hoping it wouldn't come up. And he's like, it just, and Bill Murray said, "I think you should watch it again. I think you should revisit, because there's really good moments there, and I think it's a good movie." And then he threw Dick Donner on the bus, and he's like, he did what you just said, and he goes, "I think he was deaf."
Oh, I've heard that quote before, that where he thought Richard Donner was deaf.
He thought Richard Donner was deaf. And I get what you're saying compared to other things, but there's something so weird and offbeat about it that makes this special, that makes this Christmas movie a must watch for me every year. It never gets boring to me. There's a few movies that I can watch over and over and over and over, and this is one. Like some of the jokes, like when they thought he was Richard Burton, and they're like, quote Hamlin, he goes, "I am, therefore I am, therefore I am, the father." And it's big and it's there, but it fucking kills me every time. And then what is the whole thing with him and Carol Kane? the Ghost of Christmas Present.
By the way, since you brought her up, Carol Kane is my absolute favorite part of this movie.
It's so funny, and it's
She's
like
so funny,
and it's like why did they beat each other up? Like, where does the violence come from? Like, can you think metaphorically, like what that's about? Or I can't understand it, but it kills me.
Apparently, she in the course of that, she hurt him so bad they had to shut production down for a couple days. There's a scene where she grabs his lip and yanks his lip, and apparently she did it so hard she tore his lip. And they had to shut production down for a couple of days while he got it fixed.
I remember reading somewhere, and Joseph, you probably can research this, but she had a hard time on this set. And I can't remember why or if it was true or anything like that, but I remember there was something specific. But her beating the shit out of Bill Murray is fucking classic.
Yes.
It's so funny, and it's so unique to anything else. And it's just
she's so tiny.
And he's
so
tiny.
big.
And it's like, and she starts from the beginning. Yep. And she's got such a cheery disposition, and she's so sweet and everything. And like when she has the toaster and she comes up and smacks the shit out of him with the toaster and just beats his fucking ass. It's hilarious. It's classic.
I have always loved Carol Kane. Like, she is my okay, so there's like two kinds of crushes you have, right? There's like the crush you have because they look like Monica Bellucci. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm in love with you just because you look like Monica Bellucci, right? And then there's the crush you have where like that person doesn't have any physical attributes that would make you have a crush on them, but something about their energy or their personality or just whatever it is, just the energy about them, you immediately fall in love. Carol Kane is my energy crush. Like, if I was a young man and knew Carol Kane when she was young, I would be so in love with her because there's just something about her energy that every time I see her, I'm just in love again.
When did you first see her?
Oh my God. I remember seeing her in movies when I was like a kid.
Wasn't she, didn't she have a guest star on Taxi? Am I making that up?
I think she did have a guest star spot on Taxi. Didn't she play, she played somebody related to Latka, right? Like his girlfriend from
something like that.
So I watched a lot of very PG movies when I was a kid because my parents didn't watch anything R-rated.
Boring. No,
yes, they were super boring.
God, your parents suck.
We'd watch like these old movies from like the 70s and 80s and stuff that were PG. And I remember seeing her a couple of times, and there was just always something about her that I loved. And then when she shows up in Princess Bride as the wife of Miracle Max.
Yeah. Liar. Apparently she's... I've seen her on stage. I've seen her. I saw Wicked once, and she was in Wicked.
Yeah,
but apparently she's a hot shot on stage. She's a serious theater actress. Yeah,
and I think really that's where she had focused most of her energy was in theater, and was one of the top actors. So the minute she shows up in this movie, that is the stretch of the movie that I love. Like, I am in love with every scene that has Carol Kane in it. I think she's awesome. I think she and Bill Murray are awesome together. And I wish they had done more movies together. He's so just like the self-absorbed asshole. And she's so like the Tasmanian devil that when they slam into each other, it is like the perfect energies bouncing back and forth.
But there's something about so like the scene when the guy walks up with his little mouse and he's like, I don't know what to do. And he goes, can you staple him? He wanted to staple the antlers to the mouse's head. And you see that. And it's hilarious. But I don't know. There's something about Bill Murray that just makes me love him. And I see everything with a grain of salt. Like there's the humor. Like Don Johnson could never do this role, right? You see that and you're like, wow, he's a real dick.
Yeah.
But when you see Bill Murray do it and you're like, the grumpier he is and the more pissed off, could you please stop the goddamn hammering? When he tells him to stop the hammering, it's hilarious. It kills me. Now, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, NordVPN. Ty and I have been using NordVPN to protect our devices from malware. Who likes malware? Malware is everywhere, and we need protection from malware. And we also like to stream our movies. and TV shows like The Expanse, traveling abroad. And stop getting those annoying pop-up ads. I hate those pop-up ads. NordVPN can even help you organize all your passwords and provides threat protection by automatically blocking suspicious websites. NordVPN is giving Ty and That Guy listeners a special deal if you sign up using our link. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/TATG to get a huge, it's going to be huge, discount off our NordVPN plan plus 4 months for
free.
It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/TATG to get a discount off your plan and 4 months for
free.
And we got to shout out to Karen Allen because, we did, to go back and think, like, I think she's really fun in this. And we just did Starman. Did Starman, and we were talking about her, and we talk about Indiana Jones all the time. And then Donner in this, you got the original Superman, you got Lethal Weapon, you got Goonies, you got this movie. Like he just had a magic touch at this period.
He had a stretch there where he had, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years where just everything he touched turned to gold. Yeah.
And there's the great, I'm going to look on IMDb right now, but there's the great 80s character actors that are in here. I mean, it's full of these.
Well, you mentioned excuse me. You mentioned Bobcat Goldthwait, who I love. He's just been fantastic in everything he's done. So I love seeing him in this.
You got fucking Robert Mitchum. Like, how did they ever get Mitchum to do this movie?
Because this was at that point in Mitchum's career where if you gave him some money and a hotel room to get drunk in, he'd do anything.
See, is that okay? So the iconic actors like Robert Mitchum and those people in those days, I think if they go through that period when you're too young to notice that they're going through that period, you always see them as their peak. Yeah, but this one had great 80s actors like Michael J. Pollard, the one that thought he was Richard Burton. That kills me every time when I watch that. And there's a lot of like subtle jokes like that not a lot of people are going to know who. I mean, I guess a lot of grown-ups will, but not like kids watching it are going to know who Richard Burton is. And there's just just the weirdness of it that I really love about it. And Alfre Woodward.
Yeah, as the long-suffering secretary.
Yeah.
Who by the way, gets hit in the face in one scene where Bill Murray is startled and throws his arms back, winds up elbowing her in the face. That was real. That actually happened.
Did it really?
Yeah. So one of the things that in looking at some behind the scenes footage and some interviews and stuff, one of the things that talked about is that Bill Murray was just ad-libbing constantly, right? And so one of the things that frustrated Richard Donner is Bill Murray was impossible to block. Because as an actor, you know what blocking is. But you go and you block the scene, which is for the 8 people who care about how movies are made. It's where you go through the scene with the actors and you put marks on the floor and you tell them where the camera is going to be and you figure out, like, you're going to start here, you're going to say these lines, you're going to move over here, the camera is going to track with you, the camera will be in this position when you reach your mark, that kind of stuff. And figuring it all out so the actor knows what the space is and where they can deliver their scene. And directors need to know all that stuff because they need to know where to put the camera and where the camera should move and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and the camera guy needs to anticipate your moves.
Exactly.
Because if he doesn't know where you're going to move.
Where you're going. Yes. Yeah. 100%. So, but apparently Bill Murray would just run around. He would he was ad-libbing his lines. So normally you would cue movements off of moments in the scene. So you'd be blocking out a scene and you'd got the script there and you'd say, okay, when you deliver this last line here, that's when the camera is going to start moving and you track over with it. And then you deliver your next line in this position, right? So you do it off of the lines in the scene. So everybody's cueing off of that, right? If a guy's just ad-libbing everything and running around, nobody knows where anybody's going and it's chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, so in one of the behind the things I've seen is that there's like another movie's worth of footage that they just left on the cutting room floor because they shot like twice as much footage as they needed because Bill Murray was just like ad-libbing like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, one of the, and of course, Bill Murray's a comedic genius. And so if you have a guy like that, you're going to let him try some things out.
Well, Dick Donner was trying not to let him. That's what the problem was.
Yeah, and there was a lot of conflict there. But one of the things that happens is because of that, nobody knows where they're supposed to be at any given moment. And it really can create some chaos on the set. And that's one of those scenes where he was doing a bunch of crazy stuff. She just was in the wrong spot because she didn't know where she was supposed to be. She didn't know what he was going to do. So when he jumps back and throws his arms back, she's just standing behind him and she just gets tagged. He drops her with that elbow shot to the face. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that...
And they left it in the movie.
Because it's, but like what I love about Bill Murray in this performance, but all his performances, is every moment is so full. He's never wrote memorization and just regurgitating exposition. And so little details, like even when his secretary puts her hands on his shoulder as he's talking, and then he reaches over and grabs it, and you there's like some kind of secret love affair between them, and they never address it or whatever.
Right.
Like those little things make it so rich and so interesting. And there is a balance that you need to achieve. So the reality is that there are people that want to make their jobs easier. They want you to be in their frame. The director wants you to say, the writer wants you to say their words and everything like that. And they care more. In the actor does have to stand up for the moment because things do happen in the moment that you need to follow. So like a show like The Expanse, we don't have time, we don't have money, and we have a very ambitious show.
Yep.
So you come in and you know the script 100%. You hit the block, you do the blocking, you hit the marks, and do everything like that. But that's not the best way to work. There are moments when you have ideas or whatever in the moment, and you would want to go explore that. But there is a balance, right? So you would have to explore that in the sense of, knowing that you might be throwing a camera person off. You can't not care about the camera person. You can't not care about the script. You can't not care about these things. And what Karen Allen talks about is that Bill Murray knew the script. He knew the lines. And when he would show up, she goes, I think it's his way, in which I understand this. I mean, I've been on films where it's been free like that, like improv, and I feel like that's when I'm at my best. Because you stay to the script, you stay to the point, but in the moment, something might strike you differently, or you might see an opportunity or something like that. And if you're moment to moment within the scene, it's always fresh, it's always interesting. You're always having to listen because you don't know what the other person's going to say, you don't know what they're going to do, but you're staying true to the script and you're staying on task and you're hitting your marks or doing anything like that. And so she says, like, Bill Murray would improvise within the scene because it was his way of getting into the scene.
Right.
And I feel like that some actors would benefit from that because they're so controlled and they memorize their lines in their room, and they come and the director tells them they hit their marks and they just say this, and you see the director give them a note and they physically can't do the note that they're saying because they're so fucking locked in.
Yep.
And you need to have freedom of being able to throw it away in that moment and find something else or whatever, as long as you are fulfilling the intentions within the script.
And as with all things, I think there is a balance there. So I'll tell you a story that a friend of mine told me, because it has nothing to do with Scrooged, but it's about improvising and it's funny. So I think every actor, I'm throwing your profession under the bus here, buddy. Every actor thinks they're good at improvising, and about 5% of them actually are. So yeah, if you get a Bill Murray, yeah, right. Of course, he's fucking great at improvising because he's a comedic genius.
Yeah.
I always found, and now I'm going to pull you out from under the bus. I always found your notes, your script notes, when you would come and ask me about something, very insightful. And more often than not, I would agree with you, and you would want. But that's what we would wind up doing in the scene. I had many actors do the same thing, and their notes were always terrible. Where I was like, no, please do not do that. Please don't. The thing that you think is going to make this scene better makes it much, much worse. So please stop. So yes, there are people like you who have insight and can and can give a good note.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great note. You should definitely do that. And then there are people who are terrible. And I think the people who are terrible are greatly outnumber the people who are good at it.
Yeah.
Now, so a friend of mine worked on one of the most successful shows of like the last decade. Anyway, I'm not going to say what the show is or who any of the names are because it would be embarrassing, but worked on this show and had a lead actor who had way too much power. The lead actor was an executive producer on the show, was very famous, was clearly had the idea in their head that they were the reason the show was successful. And this lead actor was convinced that they were a ad-libbing comedic genius. Convinced of this, right?
Yeah.
And so every shot, they would go in to do the scene, this actor would begin ad-libbing stuff. And eventually, after 3 or 4 or 5 takes of this actor ad-libbing what they thought was funny, the director would come up and go, hey, so the producers are asking us to get one that's on book, which if you don't work in the film industry, on book just means, do the lines that are in the script. Can you get us one that's on book, just so we have it? And then they would shoot it and he would do the version that was in the script. And I was like, how many of those ad libs ever wound up in the show? And the person I'm talking about, the person I know who worked on the show, said none. They never put a single ad libbed line from that actor in the show. He never once got a line through. And somehow would watch the show later and didn't recognize that none of his ad libs made it into the final cut. Like the sort of emotional blindness there like baffles me. That like after a year of that, wouldn't you be like, oh wait, every time I ad lib, they cut all my ad libs, so maybe I'm not good at it. No, that never occurred to this person. Never occurred to them.
And that's the fear, is like, you don't want to be, you don't want to be in a blind spot. You don't want to think that you have something and you don't. So if you bring something to a writer, you better have done your homework and really understand why, because there are sometimes writers, like you say, that everybody thinks they're Bill Murray. There's writers that everybody thinks they're Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And you kind of go and you look at their stuff, and then as you're having a conversation about the scene and like what the intentions are, you're like, oh, okay, this guy has no idea how like illogical, like what there's like he doesn't know what intentions are, like what
right.
And so it's a balance, is a thing that you have to walk, and then it's like, well, I mean, fuck it, I took the job, so I'll just do it the way they want him to do it.
But having said all of that, Bill Murray is one of those actors who has the intelligence and the comedic chops. If he wants to try out a line, if he wants to try to improvise something, I think a smart director gets out of his way and lets him do it.
Exactly. Because, well, like, for instance, like the secretary, when he grabbed his hand and there's like this, like he kind of like there's like this love affair thing and he does it, whatever. And you see that adds to the comedy. It adds to the history of the scene. Now there's a secret between the two. All of those things enhance it. That is a risky move. And so only because if you grab her hand and you do that and it doesn't work, then you just ruin the whole thing. And, it's just the thing. So everything that I see, well, because it's in the movie, everything that I see, like him seeing the picture of, when he saw the picture of Alfre Woodard's son on the wall, and he's like, what is this? And he goes, how many fingers does Santa have? And she looks, she's like 11. He goes, it's trash, get rid of it. And he takes it and balls it. All that shit was his walking by the picture, and he sees that, and that is hilarious. And it's in line with his character. It serves the scene, what the scene is supposed to tell. It's where he is in that moment. He's not improvising like where he is at the end of the movie or in the middle of the movie. He's improvising where he is in that moment. And so all of those things, knowing where you are in the story, knowing what the scene is about, knowing all that work is there. And so he's improvising within all of those things. A lot of those people you're talking about, that actor's genius, when they improv, they're not doing it in the confines of understanding how they're serving the story. They're just like, oh, this would be funny. I mean, I did a movie recently with a guy that was like making, like having joke lines and things like that and saying things within the thing. And you're looking, and you're like, this has nothing to do with your character. This has nothing to do with the story. This has nothing to do with the scene. If we're sitting around the Coke machine and like making each other laugh, yeah, it might be funny in that, but it doesn't. You're doing it out of context of the story.
Yeah,
this is you, the actor, being funny. This is not the character being funny. This is not the character's voice. This isn't even where the character is in his journey, in his arc in the story. So that is completely trash. And all you're doing is making everybody's job harder.
Well, that analysis that you just did of why some ad libs work and some don't, and the context of the story and all that stuff. So I think you make, and I've noticed this about you the whole time we've known each other. I think you make the classic thoughtful person's mistake. My wife does this all the time. If you're a deeply thoughtful person, and by thoughtful I mean you really reflect on things. You really try to understand why things are the way they are, and you put a lot of thought into the way you move through the world. If you're one of those people, I think you assume everyone else is one of those people, and most people are not. So that analysis you just did is why you're good at giving script notes, because you're thinking about it. You're going, oh, okay, so here's my character, and here's where I am in the story, and here's why I think this line could be tweaked a little bit so they would better represent who I am at this moment. That's an analysis a writer loves to hear, right? Where you bring that to me and I'm like, let's try that. That sounds great. If you look at it and go, I think I'm funny, you know what I could say here? I could say that funny thing that all the kids are saying on YouTube right now, and then everybody would laugh and they would think I was funny. I think more people are doing that than the people who are doing the deeply thoughtful analysis of things. But people who do deeply thoughtful analysis, they weirdly think everyone else is doing it too.
Right.
Like Janae my wife will come to me and go, why did the person do that thing? And I'm like, because they're an idiot. And she'll be like, well, but didn't they know that if you do X, Y will happen and Z will be the result? I'm like, you know that because you think about things. They didn't know that because they never spent one moment thinking about that thing. And she's like, well, how do you go through life not thinking about things? And it's funny to me how often people who do think don't recognize that a lot of people around them don't.
Yeah.
Like they doesn't recognize it.
Let's talk about the Ghost of Christmas Past. You know, it was supposed to be Sam Kinison.
Yeah.
That's who they wanted. But David Johansen's good friends with Bill Murray, so he got the job. How do you think it would have been with Sam Kinison?
I don't know. I mean, I loved Sam Kinison. I loved him.
Uh-huh.
He was a maniac. Like he was the epitome of, and I'm not saying anything about him personally because I don't know what his personal habits were. You know, I mean, I know the stories about him, but I don't really know his personal habits. But he was the epitome of what you picture when you picture 80s, coked out of his mind, drunk on Jameson, superstar, comedian, right? Just he was the epitome of that. So would that energy have worked bouncing off of the thing that Bill Murray was doing in this movie? I don't know. Like, I love both of them. I don't know that if that energy would have worked. I mean, I would still love to go to an alternate universe where that happened and see those scenes. Because, I mean, just Kinison was just a maniac.
What's up with the TV censor lady? They're constantly, like, as soon as she comes on the screen, she gets hit by that pole and the guy turns around and she's constantly getting just her ass kicked through the whole movie. Like, what is that saying? There's just random, there's random violence, but like saying the censor just,
everybody hates that person, right? Everybody hates the censor. Yeah.
And then what was crazy to me is like when Bill Murray gets the Christmas spirit, all of a sudden she gets horny, and then rapes that dude that's tied up to a chair. Like, there's just such weird things about that movie that make it so interesting to me.
I mean, that might be a little far for me.
Yeah.
But
what was the point of that? Do you like? What made her horny?
I have no idea. It just felt like a random thing that happened. But it's one of those moments that just felt like I got dialed to 11 for no reason.
Yeah, and it's just kind of that thing, and and then Robert Mitchum wants to make television for animals, and he's like wants to cast. He thinks there's an emerging market of animals.
By the way, Mitchum is a genius there because they actually have channels like that now. That dude would probably be rich. If
Are you serious?
Oh yeah,
I would have been one of those guys that's like, I don't get it, Mitchum. Sorry.
No, they have channels of like birds and rabbits running around that your cat can watch.
Yeah, there's a few 80s moments that didn't age too well. Like the Solid Gold Dancer when they're like, he's like, I can't see her nipples. She's like, you can see her nipples. He's like, everybody wants to see her nipples. And there's like a crowd of people looking and being like watching you being like, I can only see a little bit of her nipples. You remember like that thing?
That doesn't age super well, but it is still kind of funny. But the reality of it though is that's like a dial to 11 version of a conversation you absolutely would have. If you're making a TV show, that conversation happens. Having worked for years in making a TV show, yeah, you hate those people. You do. You hate them, right? Because they bring up the most nonsensical stuff as like, well, we think we should remove this, and like baffling stuff. So I get why the movie hates her. Another
thing that doesn't age well is like Elliot shooting up the place when he comes back. But as a kid, I never bumped up on that because it's almost like to me like the Three Stooges, you know, like how they're constantly hurting each other, but there's not real danger.
Yeah.
And I can understand, you know, what people say about that. I think Bill Murray's like at his best when he's like so happy that he's beating the shit out of Elliot and he doesn't like, he's swinging him around in the elevator and like boom and like, you know, all this stuff there. And I think I don't think the shooting up's funny, but I think the way he's so unbothered by the danger is funny.
Yeah. And that kind of scene was funny before people started really doing it.
Yeah.
I
mean, look, that they had the postal thing in the 80s, you know, like, and you know, when people say you go postal, so, you know, it still was, but there's a lot of humor and violence, you know, there's like the Carol Kane beating the fuck out of Bill Murray. There's the censor lady getting shit kicked out of her, and then there's him beating up Elliot when he comes back. Elliot shooting the place, and it works for me. I thought it was really funny, but there's little like I wrote down some like moments that just made me laugh out loud, like like the fake TV show, and she's like, I know your father. He's out chasing beaver, you know, like if I know your father, it's like the Leave It to Beaver spinoff and play with that. Also, did it, I mean, it was so wrong, but it made me laugh so hard is when he steals the cab from the old lady. Like he goes, oh, excuse me, drops something, gets in there, and then he shoots her fucking bird. And she's like, you cocksucker. And he's like, bye, grandma. And then it drives off. It's like fucking brutal, man.
Okay, see now that scene I think is funny. Like I think that's one of the funnier scenes.
Oh yeah. And also like the subtle humor of when first of all he puts out the waiter. The waiter's on fire, puts out the waiter. And he's like he says the thing that's not great. I thought you're Richard Pryor. But he puts out the waiter and then he thinks he's a ghost and he's like, "Are you him?" And the guy goes, "Are you he?" He corrects him like right there. After he just like spazzed out and threw the thing or whatever. It's really funny.
I think that's also, isn't that famously one of there's a moment there that it was an accident that wound up on film too, where he slips in some water that's on the floor and falls down and his feet fly up. That actually happened. He actually slipped and fell and they just kept it in there because they thought it was funny.
Do you remember off the top of your head some of your favorite moments of the film?
Yeah, but so my every favorite moment of mine in this movie is every moment Carol Kane is on screen. That is absolutely my favorite bits of the movie.
I will say the one time I'm with Bill Murray and not with Karen Allen is when, you know, he's on that dog show and the head of the network wants him to go out and have a good, you know, hang out and have a good time. And she's like, but we had plans with so-and-so. I mean, look, here's the deal. Like, he's got a career. He's trying to work I thought he made perfect sense. It's like, look, they'll be fine. Like, this is an important thing. She's like, no, we got to go to our friends. I mean, maybe that's the dick side of me, but you know, I think my wife would be like, oh, no. We should go to this. This is important. You know, Stan and Julie will fucking understand. And then he's like, okay, well, how about this? Because she's like, I'm not going, I'm going. And he goes, okay, well, how about this? I'll go do this, and then I'll call you later, whatever. I was with him on that.
Well, okay, so you are in a Hollywood house.
Yeah.
Like, you've been an actor for, gosh, how long now? Like 20 years?
Longer than that. Right? I started when I was 7, but go ahead.
Yeah. But anyway, so you've been an actor for a long time, and Jen is in the entertainment industry, right? She's on the sports side, but she's still in the entertainment industry. I think because of that, and because she's so understanding, because she's also in the same industry, I think like you both would understand that moment. I think if you said, hey, the head of the network wants to take me out, Jen's going to understand what that means, and she's going to be like, oh yeah, you definitely need to go with them.
Now, and let me, but while you're thinking of this, let me preface this. Like, now I do like, now if it was like, you know, if it was my kid's football game, or if my mother was having a birthday party or something, I'm not going out with the president of the bank. I'm going to go, those things trump that. But if I'm just going to go have drinks with fucking what's his name, then yeah, we're going to the president of the network's party. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is they're playing it like Bill Murray has a corporate job. He does. He has a corporate job, right? And they're just playing it like it's like, you know, he's like the CEO, and his long-suffering girlfriend who never gets to see him, like, it's like, we need special time between me and you, but you spend all your time at work. It's that kind of scene is what they're trying to do there. Yeah. But if you work in the entertainment industry, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like something else, because you're like, no, that's just how that world works. That's just how that life works. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of LA Hollywood in that, like John Glover.
Yeah.
You know, like, he was like the perfect, hey, how you doing? Hey, we met at Spago, remember? Fixing his tie and doing the thing. See you around, pal. I mean, look, think about Die Hard. Like, what's his name in Die Hard, right? Like, hey, let's make a deal, baby. What's his name? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Ellis.
Ellis. It's like Ellis, like, this was like late 80s, early 90s Hollywood. You know, that was like at his peak at this point. Yeah, we met at Spago.
Spago. It does crack me up every time. Like, I'm so not a Hollywood insider. Like, worked there for like 7 years. I don't live in LA. I'm not the guy who's going to a different LA party every weekend. I'm so not that guy. But it does crack me up watching that, because I'm around those guys. So, like, I've known those guys. That kind of stuff does still make me laugh, where it's like, I didn't realize Spago was a thing until after I'd already eaten lunch there like 3 times with my agent. Then like, oh, you've been to Spago? I'm like, yeah, it's just like this restaurant. I had like a salad there.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, no, it's like a Hollywood thing.
Joseph, do we have a top 5?
No, we don't. So we can wrap it up.
Awesome.
Can we do top 5 times that Joseph didn't prepare us to top 5?
Yeah.
We're docking your pay, Joseph. You know, I thought would be a fun top 5, but we're not prepared for it. Is the top 5 Carol Kane movies?
Oh my God. I would happily do that. We'll have to find a time to do that.
I mean, the only one I could think of is Princess Bride.
She also did a horror movie. Didn't she do When a Stranger Calls, or in 1979? So this is baby Carol Kane. I remember her in it. Yeah, with Charles Durning, your guy, Charles Durning. Yeah, so it's the one with the call is coming from inside the house.
Oh my God, I remember that.
Yeah, and I think she's a kid. She's like 19 when she shot that movie, 19 or 20. Yeah, so she hasn't always done comedy, because that obviously was a horror.
So off the top of our head, Princess Bride, When a Stranger Calls.
Now we're just listing movies we can remember that she was in.
Yeah, Scrooged, and then that movie with the Haunted Mansion thing, and then what? I mean, no matter what though, Princess Bride is going to be number 1.
Yeah, Princess Bride is pretty great, and she's great in it. She's in Annie Hall.
Oh wow! I wish I need to know more about her. There's these great actors that I like. Yeah. I know so much about everything. So.
And then she was in 27 episodes of Taxi as Latka's
That's
girlfriend.
Right. She was in License to Drive. Oh, My Blue Heaven.
Wow, she was in Ishtar.
Transylvania. I remember that. Transylvania 65000. The Last Detail. Wow.
She's in Joe versus the Volcano. I don't know. I mean, are you a fan of Joe versus the Volcano?
I enjoy it. Yeah.
It's a very strange movie, but it's a movie that gets
Brain cloud.
Frank Cloud.
Which is like, what's wrong? And he just says it nonchalantly like Frank Cloud.
So one of the things that gets quoted a lot in my house is when my wife or I will say something really stupid and random, the other person will just stare at them for a second and go, I have no response to that. Which is, I had forgotten that's from Joe versus the Volcano. But yeah, that's where it comes from.
All right, guys. Sorry, we kind of did a half-assed top 5. Blame Joseph. We love you. This was a great time. This is a beloved movie of mine and not so much Ty's. Thank you for hanging out.
No, don't do that. It's a movie that I appreciate and enjoy when I'm watching it, but it's just a movie that there are some elements of it I have mixed feelings on, is all.
So I think what I said was correct. It's a beloved movie for me, not so much you. So the way you just described is like not so much.
Yeah, you're right. I just don't want people to go away thinking like I hate this movie or something, because I don't.
What they're going to go away thinking is like, God damn, Ty can pull off a flannel shirt. That's what they're going to go thinking. Yeah, they're going to be thinking that they want to spend Christmas with that guy. Oh, in the winter wonderland. I wear
the shit out of a flannel shirt, for sure.
He's got flannel underwear, too. Thank you guys for hanging out. Please like and subscribe. I know I should have said this at the beginning, so it's probably over with now. And we love you, and this is fun, and we love hanging out with you. Say goodbye, Ty.
Hey, Carol Kane, if you listen to this podcast, give me a call. And goodbye, Ty.